Bueno, muchas gracias por estar.
Hello, thanks for being here. This is the presentation that I make every year that we have now named GeneXus in the short term because more and more processes are such that we have to discuss the short term since we don't know very well what will happen in the medium and the long term. We know the directions in which we are going in general terms, but the features and the properties we are going to give GeneXus are going to be seen only in the short term. So these are some of the things that we name what for. And the big challenges that we discussed in the keynote were going from single experiences to multiple experiences in the first place, and secondly, to be part of ecosystems that we are now creating. So what is behind this what for? What do we have to build? There's consensus that things are becoming more and more complex. The technologies we are going to be using in the industry of software development are becoming more and more complex. It's not a myth. Here you see some of the things on which we will have to work in the short and medium term. And if you look at the screen, you will see user experience, integration, security, various technologies that we will have to attack. And there is consensus in the software industry that there is a mixture of technologies that has to be used, and we don't judge which technologies are good or not. We have to go along with those that the customers use and those that are more popular. In the research and development team, our task is, on the one hand, to look at these technologies, and we will be discussing each one in detail later, and analyze the what for, the purpose of each technology. But also we have to see how we can model reality and all these technologies in different ways. And that is our difference. GeneXus is a modeling language to create and evolve business applications and complex systems. The development team and the GeneXus team itself analyze the cases you are building, trying to establish the best possible model to model the reality. So this is the purpose for which we are working every day, trying to model these complex systems in a simpler and more efficient way instead of doing everything by hand. So we are all more or less in agreement with regard to the technologies that we have to work with. Armin discussed some of them, others you'll see later. But in the short term, I'll show you some of the things on which we are working in order to model the applications a bit better. So let me start with the modeling of the user experience. I'll tell you about the evolution of GeneXus modeling. Firstly, the object to model after the interfaces were the word panels, which were an abstraction of our models in order to model and obtain applications, green screen or window applications, and later the web panels, which allowed us during the web era to design applications to run inside a browser. When the mobile era arrived, besides these two, we introduced the smart devices panels to generate native applications. But we don't call them mobile panels, because in fact the model behind them, or in other words, what the SD panels serve for is to model any kind of screen, no matter the size. The mobile size are one of the most relevant ones when we use SD panels, but actually they were designed to have a support for different kinds of screens. As time went by, you will have realized that the modeling of these two panels merged. The features that we had in web panels were put in the SD panels and vice versa. So now what we have is the following. They still coexist, these two programming models, but it is kind of awkward to have to know the models for mobile, for a mobile device, and to have the other kinds of panels also. The logic was the same, but it's not very user-friendly. So we are going towards a unified programming model in the user's experience of GeneXus, and this is the first proof of concept. We are doing it with the Angular generator to see whether it's true that both models are being unified. Obviously, they are going to be unified, and the Angular will take from one and the other for a question of compatibility. But what we needed to see was that the SD panel was if the SD panel was useful as an input for native and web applications, because we had nothing in the SD panel that was exclusively native. What is there is the interaction of the panel with the various APIs, but from the point of view of visualization, they can be exactly the same. So finally, they create frameworks, but the most important thing is that they end up reusing the HTML web components, and they will also be open source, which is not public yet because some details are missing, licenses, etc. But these components you will be able to use, extend, or create and cooperate with us. So from the point of view of modeling, in the UI we are going to have unified modeling of all the platforms, including the mini programs you saw earlier. But when modeling these objects, in some way I have to edit the panels. And as you see, we now have a cross-platform development environment like VM and the native Windows development. But we are using our new editors to edit these screens. We are building the editors in what we call multi-mode editor. On the one hand, there will be an abstract edition, and on the other hand, there will be a mode that is more what you see, what you get for each one of the platforms. And it is web-based, which means that the underlying technology is very similar to the one we included in the dashboard and query editors. So basically, when you drag things, you will see each one of the things that are happening with the data. That is to say, some kind of live editing within the GeneXus development environment and connected to real data. So this editor, these web page editors, are going to be the same as in M and the Windows platform. This is happening with all editors. The dashboard editor will also be included in the M, and we are here building a new one. But I have spend more time in the editors and the dashboards because I think that they are the objects that are sub-used by us. So in the modeling, we are going to try to facilitate very cases of use around the queries and the dashboards. For example, I have a transaction and I want to see live the data in the database. I can right-click, create a query, and this will show me a table with live data, and then I can start filtering and creating things. We want to lower the options barriers of the queries and the dashboards because we think that in general it's an object that is being subused. In the UI modeling, therefore, I edit the SD panels, but as we say early this morning, what is relevant is that we include more and more the designers in our development process. And the designers will deliver and are already delivering, for example, for an app in particular, what we call a custom design, a specific design for a certain area. There are patterns, etc., for other things that very often are back office. But if I want to do something original and unique, I am going to need a designer. You have already seen these pictures. Still the morning, we haven't gone to lunch yet, but this morning we have showed the possibility of using the designer's tools. We're going to continue working on this. It's not that we just included the design that a designer made in a web panel like is the case here. You may see that some things still need to be polished so that they are pixel perfect, but we are on the way, and we are going to be working a lot on the whole cycle. We will be able to code and export from GeneXus to Sketch and from Sketch to GeneXus and continue receiving new versions of the design. It's not that these two things are disconnected and I finish and I can't go back to working in it. And we'll also be working on other things. Sketch competitors like Adobe are not staying still, so we already have a partnership with Adobe to work on some tools. Sketch is still the leader, but we don't rule out working with other suppliers. So we are trying to improve what the developer does in the development environment, but with regard to a specific design for a specific part, we are trying to improve the use. In order to achieve consistency and scalability, designers are speaking nowadays of design systems. Last year we discussed them, and this year there's a track of people talking about design systems and what they're for. To sum up, I'll tell you that with design systems, I'm going to give consistency and scalability to my system. Sometimes I'll have to adopt one that someone is already using, like it's the case of AGESIC in Uruguay. So we have to build around the guidelines they give us. We want to be the first platform that introduces what we call the design system object. The concept is to be able to create a design system, not just to say that it's a set of patterns and practices. We say, what is this? How can we make it a product? How do we receive them? And how do we turn them into a design system or have the design in that design system? Design system is the evolution of certain themes and solves questions that were not easy to work with inside the themes. For the design system object, there is a hybrid model. One of the problems we had editing themes in particular was that the text wasn't there. How can I integrate with CCS or other pragmatic matters for a design. You will see that Maximiliano Barnett is going to give a presentation on the design system object. But this is what I mean by hybrid, a textual part and a graphic part with advanced editors and what is the state of the art in editors in any IDE. You will see that what we did with the object is that you are able to design up to the smallest detail generated by GeneXus. If I tell you that GeneXus is generating for a certain button and you say I don't like the markup, well, you'll be able to change it with the design system. Also, you have the design tokens. In the world of designers, this is a very hot topic. The designers have discovered the variables because actually it's to put a variable for each one of the conditions or the options that one can choose in a design. So we're working on this, and you will see it in the short term, and it will continue evolving. With regard to other channels, modeling of what is conversational, the chatbots. The first thing we'll do is to add more channels that you can indicate in a chatbot what channels you want, and the chatbot integrates with these channels. The one we announced today is very important for Latin America and Europe and Africa. It's WhatsApp. It's one of the most popular channels. We already had integration with the Messenger that's important in the US. And for these channels, there are other things that are outside the chats, like modeling of mini programs, for example, in China and similar regions. We are also working on editing, improving the features of the the feature of the model around chatbots, for example. And finally, the providers. We have told them that our model attacks the cross-platform. On this model, there are platforms that are generated and that vary, but we will include here the recast provider, which is one of the most popular providers for the SAP world. Now, leaving the channels of user experience aside, nowadays, as Nicolas said, we are the low-code tool that attacks more channels. And we will also include mini programs, etc. in the future. But with regard to the world of integration, what we needed in order to integrate in the world of ecosystems, there will be several presentations concerning artificial intelligence in GeneXus. And basically, we are working and will continue working in the short term on the following. Up to now, we were able to integrate with AI models given by big providers of the West and the East world. We were able to consume those services as they were. For example, image recognition could be used and would be possible to recognize a flower, but it was not possible to recognize a daisy. Why? Because this algorithm has to be retrained so that it recognizes what we want. Now, with GeneXus, and we'll have a lab around the machine learning algorithms, we will be able to train these algorithms from GeneXus so that they start recognizing daisies. Same algorithms, but now we can train them. Secondly, as I said earlier, we will be able to execute machine learning at the edge, which means that we will be able to compile these models and do whatever is required to run core ML in a mobile device by recognizing the face of the daisy without the need of going to Google or another provider of AI in the cloud. We want to recognize the daisy in the field without having to go to the cloud. Damian Savia is going to speak about each provider and whether things are running in the devices or not. This is an advancement that is going to be explained more in depth by Damian. But you should expect a significant evolution with regard to AI and what can be done with GeneXus. Since the data are at the edge, as I was saying earlier, artificial intelligence is going in that direction because it's very costly to upload all the data to the cloud providers. And also the algorithms of artificial intelligence are moving to the data sources that we know because the data are already there and we don't need to move them from one server to the other in order to train them. And this is a trend, a current trend. And another important point for integration is how we are modeling at the moment the APIs in GeneXus. The problem we are trying to solve is not complicated. Or at least it's not complicated to explain. In GeneXus, how do we expose our API while we have a data provider, a business component, etc. And at a certain point, we say we want to put it out there, so we choose a property and a protocol, and this is exposed, and the clients start consuming it. They consume the compilation, but if I want to add a parameter, a certain procedure, or change something in the procedure, make it evolve, I have to be aware that there are clients that are connected here, and I can't do it, or I can't change the name. I would like to change it maybe because I was programming in a very neat manner, but I know that someone is coupled directly to my internal model. So what we did with GeneXus, and Alejandro Paniza will describe it in greater depth, is to create an API option, and the client therefore does not connect directly to our internal model. The customer is connecting to the API object, so the internal and the external model connect, and I will be able to evolve these things here, and then when I modify something to the outside, I do it in the API object. We have an impact on the database, and we will also have an impact on the changes in the API objects to understand the effect it has on our customers. This will allow us to discover and understand more easily what we are exposing to the outside, what are the points of contact with the exterior, and protocols continue to change and new ones arise, so I will be able to deploy these eventually to the API mediators in the world. For example, Amazon Gateway, etc. So this is an important point. But it's not only the APIs. Data modeling is being followed very closely by us, and there's consensus at the moment with regard to the evolution of the data sources. Where are the data? And what are the features of the DBMS nowadays? Well, all of them are becoming hybrid, like the SAP HANA. And what does it can be used for app or LDP. And then they are multimodal. There has been an evolution in this, and I'm going to describe it in a presentation on the architecture of the systems that I will give on Wednesday. They have evolved, and there are data sources that from 2000 onwards became specific for different cases and different uses. They may be bitemporal or Q-value or documental or relational. So what's happening is that the big DBMS underneath are multimodal. SQL Server can support graphs or data or storage in columns, or memory, or storage in rows or bitemporal data. So we are going to be working with the features of these DBMS that are very evolved in certain models. We did it with HANA, and we want to continue evolving. Blockchain is a DBMS on which we're working with the same API as the for each. It's not in all of the models that the DBMS are using, but soon we will have access to the blockchains, and it will be one more flavor to all the flavors that are in the DBMS. The big winner is the SQL, the way in which the queries are being done to all these data stores is the SQL. So based on the data, the for each will continue to be our battle horse in order to attack all the DBMS and the SQLs in order to have access to this data. From the point of view of security, we want to add metadata to all of the data related to security. At the moment, in GeneXus, we still don't have something to differentiate the features of the data we have when we design, for example, a transaction. The level of security that is required is not the same for all of the data. And if we start analyzing the classification of data, we will be able to know how critical they are for the application, and eventually the various kinds of tools that are integrated in GeneXus, for example, the security scanner that is integrated in the process of development in the IDE, but also in the process of debug, because we did it with the build task, can take this data and tell us whether we are running any security risk and exposing too many data.
As regards complex system modeling, what we are living through is going from monolithic architectures as a large monster to microservices and many things in between. In my talk about the state of the art, I'm going to be talking about this, and Armin will be talking about specific things that we can do. We are seeing how GeneXus adds value to all the architectures that you want to build. In fact, what microservices is proposing is decoupling and decoupling once and again. Now, what happens is that there is no cohesive vision about a system. Therefore, that's what we are looking to do with GeneXus, how to give a vision independent of the architecture. The motto of this event is builders, and there is a sentence that is quite well known, at least in the model engineering, which is essentially all models are wrong, but some are useful. We are persuaded, and those of us in the development team are persuaded that we want GeneXus to be useful to create and evolve business applications to what our clients need.